Welcome to the uLead podcast, brought to you by the Council for School Leadership of the Alberta Teachers Association. Hello, Eliza Reid. Thank you so much for talking to me today and to us today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really excited about uLead coming up.
We're getting really excited too. I always say when the calendar turns over to the new year, I start looking forward to talking to people and getting together in Banff, and so we're really looking forward to that as well. Do you know what? Speaking of Banff and speaking to me about meeting people, what I would really like to do is introduce you to some of our delegates who are going to be at uLead coming up. And so you will be doing one of our keynotes, and I'm really excited because I know a little bit about what you were going to talk about. But why don't we introduce you? Why don't we tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell some of our people listening a little bit about yourself, and kind of how you came to be on the big stage at uLead.
Sure. It actually links as well to what I'll be talking about, so I can go into a little bit more detail later. But I grew up just outside of Ottawa and had a pretty normal upbringing in the small town on a hobby farm there, and moved to England to go to graduate school. And in graduate school, I met a man from the country of Iceland, and I sort of contrived to win a date with him. And it's a very long story, but we ended up becoming a couple, moving to Iceland just over 20 years ago. Why is all this relevant? It's relevant because in 2016, my husband decided to run for political office for president of Iceland. And after a 7-week campaign with very little notice, became the head of state of the country. And so I served in the unofficial role of First Lady of Iceland for 8 years, which is safe to say that I never expected. But I am also a best-selling author. I've written a nonfiction book on the women of Iceland, on Iceland's position as closest country in the world to closing the gender gap. And I talk a lot about gender equality, diversity and inclusion, entrepreneurship, and I run a writers festival in Iceland too, and do a lot of public speaking. So I sort of have a varied background, and that's a little bit what I'll be talking about. But I should also add, I am the children of educators and married to an educator and the daughter-in-law of educators. So I also know that I am speaking to maybe one of the most important groups of professionals that you can ever meet.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very nice compliment. And that is quite the journey. Yeah, that is quite the journey from outside of Ottawa to living in an island in the Atlantic. And so I'm really interested in that. Now, of all those experiences, tell us a little bit about what you are going to be talking about. And you mentioned it a little bit during your both keynote and breakout at uLead this year.
Well, my keynote is called The Bend in the Road, Making the Most of Unexpected Opportunities. And as you can imagine, when my husband, or when we together, decided that he was going to try to run for president, the first time he'd ever run for political office, really because the stars aligned. We had 4 children under the age of 6. I was running this writers retreat, working freelance. It wasn't what we thought. And really within the span of 2 months, I was going from wearing my old maternity pants because they still fit well, to Googling how to curtsy because I was going to go and meet the Queen of Denmark. And, it was such an unexpected and wonderful honor and privilege to be able to serve my adopted country, but it was also quite intimidating, as you can imagine, because all of a sudden you're thrust on the national stage, you're thrust on the international stage to a certain degree. And I really kind of had to decide, look, I have this completely unanticipated moment in life. Am I going to grasp hold of that, even though it's scary and even though it's intimidating, or am I just going to squander the moment? And so the talk really examines, through some funny stories. I hope you can imagine there's quite a few funny stories, some of the trials and tribulations of me finding my way in this role, and really how I used it to try to speak up, because all of a sudden I was also nationally known as somebody's wife, and I was less known as Eliza. And it's very strange for one's identity also to become known in connection with someone else all of a sudden, because even though I'm very proud of my husband, I wouldn't say it's my defining characteristic as a person. And so I really wanted to kind of confound the expectations of what the female spouse of a male head of state is like and what she's supposed to do. And I wanted to use those moments to use my voice and kind of really nudge things in the right direction. So that's what the talk is going to cover. The breakout session is really also all about storytelling. I'm also an author, as I mentioned, and I run a writers retreat, and it's going to be really talking about how we can tease out those special stories that we each have, because we all have a unique story. We don't have to have become famous or been the first to achieve something or the fastest to achieve something, but we all have something unique. It makes us special, but it helps us, connects us with other people who we may on the surface think that we don't have that much in common with, but we actually do when we go a little deeper. And so that breakout session is going to help us tease out those sort of stories and how to create memorable experiences for people through using those stories.
I'm getting excited just talking to you about this. This is outstanding, and that's true. That idea that every leader has a story and has a path towards becoming a leader, or we have many aspiring leaders, people who are in positions of perhaps not overt, but like official roles of leadership, and perhaps that they're working behind the scenes and how they come to that and how they define that role. So I'm really looking forward to hearing you and your perspective talking about those things. Now, the one last thing that I really like to ask our participants or our keynotes is, when people are walking away, when they're driving home, when they're maybe flying home after our conference, what do you hope that they will leave your session with? What do you hope the enduring lessons or enduring thought-provoking portions of your talk, or at least your presence at uLead, will be?
Well, I hope people leave in a good mood. First of all, I hope people leave energized, inspired, happy, and feel that they, have the courage to embrace these positive changes that life throws at us, to know that we can grasp hold of these scary things and kind of lean into the uncomfortable feeling that we have sometimes, because that uncomfortable feeling is what shows us that we're growing, and that we can feel that we can kind of take on those challenges that we're being thrown, and that we'll really make the most of them as well. Not just kind of deal with them, but actually use them to the greatest advantage. It's like what you said about leadership, and it's what I often say about role models. We are all kind of role models or leaders in some way, and whether that's within our families, our schools, our places of worship, our places of work, and we can really decide what kind of role models we want to be, if we want to be positive or negative role models. And so I just want people to be reminded that you make a difference, that every person in that room who's going to be listening to that talk can make a difference. And I want them to feel excited and inspired that they can go out there and have the energy and the enthusiasm to grasp hold of whatever is coming along and really help to just nudge things in the right direction.
One of the things that I often say is the reason that being in education is so important, so interesting, is because it makes a difference. It makes a difference to so many. And so I love how it sounds like you have that same perspective. And that probably comes from knowing a couple educators yourself, as you said.
Well, and I have to say, like, we all remember those teachers from when we were growing up. We remember the teachers that had a positive impact on us. We always remember them. We remember the teachers who may have had a negative impact on us all the time. They really both ways have that. And so I think, again, having grown up, being surrounded by teaching is often a thankless profession. It's certainly, I'm sure it's very rewarding a lot, but it's also it's sometimes one of the least appreciated things. And if I can kind of give a jolt of energy and appreciation to the people in the room, I think that is really, really important, because it is such a I was about to say impactful profession, but my father, who is a teacher, would say that you shouldn't necessarily use impactful always in that way, that it's a profession that has a great impact. So there we go.
Absolutely. the last thing I'll say is, it is the end of January, and so I think that we could all use a little boost sometimes, especially now. We'll have to wait a couple months before we hear you, but I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person, hearing what you have to say, and looking forward to just the overall general uLead experience. And I want to thank you so much for taking a little bit of time today to get us a little excited about that uLead coming up in April.
My pleasure, Corey. I am equally as excited as all of you, so I can't wait to meet many of you in person.